What's going on, guys? K-Pine here and welcome back. And in this video, I'll be featuring a team in the Ultra League that has helped me to climb over 300 points so far with some pretty good consistency. I do recognize that the Ultra League is about to rotate out, but this team has done too well for me not to share. So be sure to save this video and keep the team in mind for the next time the Ultra League is in rotation. The team involves a Corviknight Lead, Shadow Swampert Safe Swap, and Giratina Altered Closer. The team functions as an ABB style to opposing electric and fire type leads, but really it's more about its flexibility than anything else. Corviknight is a fantastic lead in setting up shield or switch advantage with its very bulky nature, along with its fast pace into air cutter and general good coverage. Shadow Swampert is one of those Pokemon that have kind of gone under the radar recently in light of some of the other water starters like Empoleon and Feraligatr. But that's what makes it so good. Not many people are really accounting for it like they used to, which they definitely should because this thing is still a menace. Then there's Giratina Altered. Gotta be honest, when I originally built this team, I had Kommo-o in its spot, but I ran out of charge TMs and couldn't get upper hand on it, which will probably save the charge TM system conversation for another day, but that's why I slapped on Giratina instead, and it's honestly been amazing. Genuinely, I think you could run most dragons here, like that Kommo-o, Regidrago, Hiram. Giratina's just been good, and it also covers Corviknight's weakness as well, so there's that. But in this video, I'll be featuring back-to-back 4-1 sets I had with the team early on in that 300 plus point climb. And with that, let's get right into the battles. All right, game to the first battle, we lead Corviknight into Zygarde. Pretty positive lead for the Corviknight here, since the Zygarde will be dealing resisted fast move damage, only able to hit us for neutral with the Crunch or Brutal Swing. They safe swap into a Shadow Gator, and I don't really have a good answer to this, so I'm going to stay in, go for an air cutter. It ends up getting a shield, which I find a little bit interesting. Maybe they just don't know the Corviknight counts yet and maybe thought it was a payback. But either way, how I like to play this matchup is this went a little bit differently because, again, I did get that shield with the air cutter. So I decided to catch the Hydro onto Giratina. But what I do recommend playing this out is you go for that air cutter, right? It will land, most likely won't get the shield from your opponent, and then you tank a Hydro and then pivot into your Shadow Swampert. Yes, the switch clock is going to be very misaligned, but at that point, that's how you're able to maintain switch advantage if you want to keep switch advantage. Where in this matchup, having that Corviknight onto that Zygarde, it's a very advantageous matchup and want to keep it that way. If it's a regular Gator, I recommend going for the payback. That way you land big damage or get that shield, and either way, same situation, you tank that Hydro, then pivot into your own Swampert. And even if it's a very advantageous matchup in the lead and you're forced to go down a shield with the Shadow Swampert here, it's worth it just for that pressure. Here they have a Typhlosion in the back, and my opponent is in a very rough spot, as I can reach this Hydro Cannon, and then I will be able to reach a second Hydro Cannon before they farm me down, so I will be able to force energy from them. So see here, I do reach that Hydro Cannon. Wasn't sure if I would survive that next Dragon Tail. Looking back on this, I definitely do. See that? So I could have gotten another mud shot in worth of damage, but we played it safe just in case my opponent was gonna throw earlier on that CMP, so I would have had to give up a shield. But either way, we are in a good spot. So go for the air cutter, a little bit of science, wanted to see how much it would do against that bulky Zygarde. It does hang on with 1 HP, get to the outrage, but that is fine. We had the shield left, shield the move, and sand attack down the Zygarde. GG's. Next battle, Corviknight lead into Galarian Weezing. Positive matchup for us as long as they're not on overheat. Now this one pivots out right away, so I'm inclined to think they're not on overheat. Now, if you have a great matchup against something in the back, like, again, these were early on, so I learned a little bit more about the team the more I played it, where in this matchup, you'll see me pivot into Swampert right away. Now, if it's a lead that you want Corviknight on, that's something you want to do. You want to pivot into your Swampert right away, and you will have to go down a shield in this matchup in order to keep switch advantage. But if it's a lead your opponent switches out of that you have a good answer to in their back line, so like Galarian Weezing against the Corviknight, my opponent swapped out of it. Shadow Swampert's a great answer to that Galarian Weezing. Then you just stay in against the Empoleon and play out the one shield scenario there, right? You will be able to survive 2 Hydros and get off 2 paybacks before your opponent is able to reach a 3rd move. So realistically, like, you don't even have to give up a shield, and your opponent could go down 2 shields if they want to. And then if they go down 2 shields, then you will as well. And then you'll be able to maintain switch, get your Shadow Swampert on that advantageous matchup, and you're pretty much set from there. Here, we do end up still having the Corviknight on the Galarian Weezing with the way we played it from last time. So this one goes for the Brutal Swing. So they're either on Brutal Swing Play Rough, Brutal Swing Sludge. I would assume Brutal Swing Sludge. So they're just going to be spamming off those Brutal Swings while I'm spamming off these Air Cutters back. Now, these sand attacks are super effective, but they definitely don't seem like it with how little damage it is doing to the Galarian Weezing. So this is just going to be a little bit of a spam fest of charge moves back and forth. Brutal Swing, Air Cutter, Brutal Swing, Air Cutter. Always making sure we're throwing on good timing here. Because of how spammy Corviknight can be, it is very easy for your opponent to lose track of energy, of which based off of that, any sand attack you should have can be very, very advantageous. Opponent tries to make a catch to the move onto their Empoleon. We do not let it happen. Get the full sand attack down. Opponent waits out their clock. Are they going to come back in with that Galarian Weezing? No, they come with a Corviknight, but it does not matter because we have essentially the back-to-back moves. We do have the back-to-back moves where one Air Cutter will take out the Corviknight and the other Air Cutter will take out the Galarian Weezing. GG's. Next battle, we lead Corviknight into Guzzlord. Now, you may think this is a good matchup for the Corviknight because you're resisting those Dragon Tails, but it's actually only slightly positive, and it's very important you throw on good timing in this matchup because after the Dragon Tails and the 4 Brutal Swings, that will be enough to KO Corviknight. And if you notice, Corviknight and Guzzlord pace the same. 9 turns to the Air Cutter, 9 turns to the Brutal Swing. Except on that 4th move, it is now 8 turns to that Air Cutter for the Corviknight, which is why I say it's very important you throw on good timing after 2, 5, 8, or 11 sand attacks in this matchup. Because even if you miss a single sand attack, your 4th move is now on the CMP tie, of which your opponent does win. So here, 3rd Brutal Swing, we are able to hold on and get off this 4th Air Cutter to take out the Guzzlord and get that ever important switch advantage. See what they come in with. They come in with their own Corviknight, and I'm actually going to load up on energy, bank a payback, and pivot out. If my opponent was going to let me do that, I was definitely going to take advantage of it. I come in Shadow Swampert, we tank the payback, and we are not in Air Cutter range, so they're going to have to go for 2nd payback, of which this is only that Air Cutter, so we can tank that comfortably, load up on more energy here, go for the Hydro Cannon before my opponent reaches that 2nd Air Cutter or the 3rd move overall. And they're gonna have to throw a move here. They cannot farm us down, and I want to get a Hydro Cannon damage off on this Corviknight or force their final shield because it's going to do a lot of damage, plus it's going to make it easier for my Giratina if it gets on it later. Here my opponent ends up going down both shields, so I'm going to pivot out, land the payback onto their Corviknight. I did not want my opponent to get a farm down from a Shadow Swampert. They would have farmed me down before I reached another payback, but they got scared, came in with their Nidoqueen, and now this way I'm able to land a non-resisted Air Cutter, which is kind of nice, but a little unfortunate I do not have my Swampert for this Nidoqueen. What is fortunate, however, is that the moveset it runs is Poison Fang and generally Stone Edge, since you don't really need Earth Power anymore due to Nidoqueen being a Mud Slapper. But a non-boosted, or I guess non-debuffed Stone Edge on this part, in this case, doesn't do a lot to the bulky Giratina Altered. Plus, we make a nice little back-breaking catch there with the Stone Edge onto the Swampert land the Ancient Power, and we should be poised to win this game from here, because all we need to do is make sure we shield this move, make so that they don't land the payback and take us out. It's an air cutter, but wait, the match clock is up. Oh my. Okay, we survive this air cutter. Does this Ancient Power KO? This Ancient Power will KO. If the match timer wasn't there, we would just Dragon Breath down the rest of the team, but the Ancient Power doesn't KO. My opponent has 2 Pokemon left on slivers of HP, and they're able to take that one. GG's. Next battle, Kommo-o. Great lead for the Corviknight here. They swap into Shadow Gator. So last time, like I said with the Shadow Gator safe swap, go for that air cutter, tank a Hydro, which we'll see they do here, and now pivot into that Shadow Swampert. I actually don't remember if I do that in this matchup. Hopefully I do. I don't. I load up on more energy and then catch again on Giratina. So yeah, I mean, if you're able to make the catch on Giratina, then go for it. But definitely the much more consistent way would be to tank that Hydro, then come in with Swampert after. In comes the Kommo-o. So they save the Gator for later, tank the Dragon Claw, knowing the Kommo-o will be left up against that Corviknight. And since I land that Dragon Claw, I can just shield the Clanging Scales and farm down, leave with a ton of energy. And now I feel like I'm in a pretty decent spot, even though they come in with an Empoleon and my entire set of charge moves here are resisted. I have the Swampert, which is actually deals pretty decent fast move pressure with the mud shots. Now I unfortunately CMP tie the Empoleon there, have to give up a shield, but we get the shield back with the air cutter, outpace to the payback before their next Hydro, and this will get their final shield or pretty much seal the win for me. They let it go, and that is going to be game, as my opponent lets me get to another air cutter here too to get that final shield, which is extremely nice. We get the boost, opponent gets scared, they end up firing off energy, and from here this is just game. Because I can come in with Swampert, I do end up getting denied, which is very unfortunate for me, because that makes it so I'm now going to have to catch this next Hydro on the Giratina, where otherwise I could have saved that catch later on just in case if needed. But fortunately, the Empoleon did not have a move. We do get to the Hydro here, take out the Empoleon, and then mud shot down the Feraligatr. GG's. Next battle, Corviknight into Florges. Now this is pre-Chilling Water Florges, an extremely dominant matchup for the Corviknight. Now, Chilling Water Florges is actually a positive matchup for the Florges. Crazy, I know, a fairy type beating a steel type. So how I recommend playing that out, fire off your air cutter right away. Good timing, as well as not being debuffed yet. Tank that Chilling Water, then fire off your next air cutter on good timing. Make sure it's on good timing. It gets a little bit tricky in these kinds of situations to throw on good timing, but it is always important with Corviknight. So fire off that second air cutter, tank the second Chilling Water, and then don't throw your third air cutter. Just load up tons of energy and just continue to overfarm. Then once your opponent fires off their third Chilling Water, which you comfortably survive, pivot into Swampert. If they stay in, you should be able to CMP tie them. And I recommend going for the Hydro Cannon just in case your opponent does catch it on something, because Hydro Cannon will be enough to KO the Florges from that HP. Anyways, so it KOs the Florges if they stay in, and it also covers for a potential catch. And then that way, you reset all the debuffs on your Corviknight and store a ton of energy, so it can be more valuable on later on in the match. Here, we landed the Ancient Power onto the Florges, pivot back into Corviknight, one sand attack, then the move. One more sand attack, then the move. Actually, not yet. Probably should have, but again, they're not on Chilling Water, so we know we could survive the Trailblaze. Air Cutter lands, and we will outpace to yet another Air Cutter before their next move, forcing the final shield from my opponent. If they want to keep the Florges around, they do not. they rely on shield advantage Skeledirge, and that's very bad because this is access to Shadow Ball. So I have one win condition here. Ancient Power boost. We get it. Giratina absolutely clutch because look at this. Bam, Shadow Ball. We survive it, reach the Ancient Power to take out the Skeledirge, and a matchup that seemed very rough because my opponent played it pretty well ends up turning into our favor because of a little bit of a luck, but we do take those. GG's. Next battle, Swampert Lead. Swampert Lead and Empoleon Lead just go straight payback. Very important, again, as I've said so many times, sound like a broken record, but I can't stress this enough, throw on good timing. If your opponent lets you throw the move first, it's going to be right away. If they throw their move first, you're going to overfarm by a single sand attack. That's kind of a little bit of a trick of a way to know how to throw on good timing. The reason why is because your opponent gets to 3 moves on 30 turns and you get to 2 paybacks on 30 turns. However, due to 1 turn it takes to throw, they realistically get to 3 moves on 32 turns and you get to 2 moves on 31 turns, which means that if you don't throw on good timing, you're going to get to CMP on your second payback instead of outpacing by that single turn. And that way you guarantee win the 0 shield in this matchup. And if it's a Shadow Empoleon lead, you're guaranteed a 2-0 shield advantage, which is huge because you survive both of those Hydro Cannons and get to your second payback. And that second payback, even if they showed the first one, that after the sand attacks, that second payback will KO. So you either get the 1-0 shield advantage and switch advantage, or your opponent goes down both shields for switch. But if they do go down both shields, you just pivot into your Swampert and you're good to go from there. Here we do end up catching a nice little Hydro Cannon onto the Giratina. Opponent will be firing off a Drill Peck. We do let it go. Don't want to give up our first shield yet. Load up on energy, fire off the Dragon Claw right before their next move. See if my opponent wants to shield it or not. They let it go, and that is kind of what's expected due to there being a Togekiss in the back. They're going to save shields for Togekiss, expecting it to be their win condition. I'm going to save swap into the Swampert. Hopefully I will get to back-to-back moves here. Sludge gets the shield. We do get to the back-to-back moves, which is nice. So that does force the second shield from my opponent. Now I need to hope that an Ancient Power will KO, but I just don't think it will. So I end up giving my first shield to the Psyshock. Opponent comes in with the Empoleon and they just snipe it down. Opponent just had a little too much energy everywhere here, so they will be able to take that one. GG's to them. Next battle, Corviknight into Zygarde. We already saw the Zygarde lead earlier. They pivoted out right away since it is a pretty dominant matchup for the Corviknight. They come in Cradily, and I do not have a great answer for this either. It's a good matchup for the Giratina, even on energy, but a single acid up on energy, it becomes a great matchup for the Cradily. So we're going to stay in, go for that Air Cutter before they reach the Rock Tomb, because we want to guarantee some non-debuff damage against this Cradily. And because we got the boost on the first Air Cutter, we're just going to go for next Air Cutter here. If we didn't get that boost, we would go for a payback there to deal a lot better damage, like the payback on the second move. But after that, I do want to preserve the Corviknight. So now I'm going to pivot into the Giratina, knowing that I will be able to keep the Corviknight around for the Zygarde. Opponent brings in a Belly Bolt, which they are dealing super effective with a Sucker Punch damage, but still that's a very interesting swap in for them, knowing that their charge moves are resisted. And it's kind of unfortunate because I would have loved to see this on the Swampert. Either way, I am able to bank all that energy and get it on the Swampert at least for a little bit, which is very nice. Fire off a Hydro Cannon, does some decent damage to that Belly Bolt. Now they're gonna fire off a move in return. I will give up a shield here just because it had the potential to be a Zap Cannon, and I know that would hurt Swampert even though it is resisted. They come in Zygarde, and now I get to spam off these Hydro Cannons, which do quite a bit to that bulky Zygarde. 2 won't be quite enough to KO it, but will probably bring it just about in the red, which it does. One more Mud Shot, then I try and catch a move on the Corviknight. We don't catch a move, but we end up outpacing to the payback and getting to it on the CMP tie. So fantastic there. I'm gonna let the move go. Opponent baits with a bulldoze. Very nice. They come in with the Belly Bolt. Can't farm us down before a Sky Attack. This can do some nice chip damage along with the Sand Attack pressure. Opponent cannot farm us down. See if they come back in with the Zygarde here. They do. So I swap into my Swampert, able to catch the move. It is just a bulldoze, but at this point, the swapping in my Swampert isn't quite a catch. It's just more my win condition by getting up all this energy. We take out the Zygarde, and from here we would outpace the Cradily before they reach a Grass Knot. So my opponent concedes. GG's. Next battle. Corviknight into Shadow Empoleon. So like I mentioned earlier, just gonna stay in and play out the 2-0 shield here for us. So we tank the first Hydro, we're going to tank the second Hydro. Lands 1 Sand Attack in the payback. If they stay in, they pivot into Goodra. Again, not a great answer for Goodra because in Ultra League, it's possible Goodra is on Draco. So just in case they are on Draco, I cover for it by landing that payback, coming with my Giratina. They were on Draco, I would take it, then fire off a move to take them out and keep switch. But there looks like they're on that Aqua Tail Thunder Punch moveset, or maybe even Thunder Punch Power Whip, which is fantastic because I'd be able to get a full Dragon Breath down. Back in comes the Empoleon, fire off a Dragon Claw, does some nice damage. Here, able to survive a Jolpeck. We're not worried. We're saving our shields. Don't want to give it up yet. And get off another Dragon Claw. See, my opponent wants to give up a shield. They don't. They let it go. So that's fine. I'm going to pivot into Swampert, get a 3 Mud Shot head start, and they come in with a Regidrago. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky because I'm forced to go for Sludges here and not the harder hitting Hydro Cannon. But fortunately, we do have the Corviknight around, which my opponent cannot farm down. That's the important part. They have Metal Sound and Dragon Breath left for their fast moves, so Corviknight is not in danger getting farmed down. Very nice, and a win condition that I have to keep in mind here. So I do shield the Dragon Energy, try and catch the next Dragon Energy, but my opponent throwing on good timing makes it so I'm not able to make that catch. And now they combo play with their Goodra, but that's perfectly fine because I can tank that energy, store it, come in with Corviknight, get a nice Sand Attack down, and from here my opponent has no win condition left. Since I land this payback and have a move stored on Swampert, the only way my opponent wins this game is by having back-to-back moves, but they do not, and they will not be able to get back-to-back moves here. And Dragon Energy lands. I just commit to the payback because I know they're not at the back-to-back moves. Swampert gets the Sludge, and this will be enough to take out the Regidrago as down it goes. GG's. Next battle, leading Corviknight into Malamar. Little bit of a tricky lead here, but kind of the same situation as with like the Swampert, Feraligatr, and Empoleon leads, that you just want to go straight payback because it takes 3 moves for them to KO. While in that range, you will be able to get 2 paybacks off. So let both moves go, no problem. Go for the first payback. See, my opponent wants to shield it or let it go. They let it go. And now I will be able to outpace, like I've been saying, by that singular turn here. You don't have to worry about good timing. You're both 1-turn fast move users. So it's pretty smart, pretty cool. Opponent comes in with Empoleon, and I'm just going to commit to the payback, like force them to throw, dump energy. No need. I don't want to bail out on an air cutter earlier and let my opponent just overfarm more. So stay in there, let them fire off energy. And I'm staying in there because I want my Swampert on the Empoleon for that alignment. Opponent has Tentacruel in the back. And at that point, we kind of just RPS them so they can see GG's. Pangoro Lead. I stay in and CMP tie the air cutter to their back-to-back close combats, which is after 10 karate chops. Here they only did 9, which is why I didn't CMP tie. And always call the first move, because even if they close combat, they're gonna have to swap out or take massive damage from an air cutter. So most Pangoros will load up to that back-to-back close combats, and then they'll either double CC and then dip, or single CC then dip. Either way, you being able to CMP tie after 20 sand attacks or 10 karate chops for them is very nice, because if they do full send that CC, they're kind of forced to shield or take massive damage and play it from there, and it kind of just puts you in a very good spot right from the beginning. Opponent does go for the close combat. Again, we give up both of our shields because we want to preserve the Corviknight, especially if they were that invested in their Pangoro against our Corviknight. They come in with Talonflame, and now this is new. If you opponent safe swaps Talonflame, you come in with your Giratina, and your opponent gets a little bit of an Incinerate head start, they're just straight up going to win the zero shield scenario here, which is kind of crazy. Honestly, this one actually might have come down to DRE, but either way, Talonflame being able to win the zero shield scenario against a Giratina altered with ancient power, I don't know, it's just kind of insane to me. I did look at the sims afterwards, and if you're both like in a lead scenario, they land the fly, you land the ancient power, you will actually be able to Dragon Breath them down without throwing your second ancient power before they reach the Brave Bird. But like I said, in this scenario, it was on the safe swap, so they got a little bit of extra energy and didn't take that Dragon Breath damage that they would have in a lead scenario. But here, Dusknoir does get a nice Astonish down, but it does not matter because we have the Hydro Cannon loaded and we are not in Dynamic Punch range. Swampert hangs on, gets the Hydro. This will be enough to finish off the Dusknoir as down it goes, and that is a good game. GG's to my opponent. So there you have it. Corviknight has been vastly improved by that 9-turn pace into Air Cutter as opposed to before without it having a cheap bait move. However, while insanely good as shown by what it can do in these battles, I'm not quite sure if it's worthy of that #1 overall spot on PvPoke. I'd definitely put it in the top 10, maybe even top 5 though. In addition, just like with any other team, combining it with the right team members is crucial, where I feel like Shadow Swampert and Giratina Altered round that out quite nicely. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.